All right, salve te discipuli, and welcome to part 2 of our Latin noun lesson. So let's just jump right in. Okay. So again, in part 1, we talked about how nouns are a bit different from English. Nouns have cases that tell you what the function of that noun is. We focused on the nominative case, which is used when the noun is the subject of a sentence, and the accusative case, which is used when the noun is the direct object of a sentence. And again, this is important because Latin gets its meaning from word endings and forms and not word order. So let's actually see what those case endings are and talk about how they work in these groups that we call declensions. So noun declensions, as I said, it's just a fancy way of saying noun groups that have the same pattern of endings. There are 5 declensions in Latin. I believe you learned 3 of them last year if you were here. They are just numbered, so you have first declension, second declension, third declension, fourth declension, and fifth declension. Fourth and fifth declension are pretty rare in Latin, so I don't think we're going to really get to those for a while. You probably won't get to those until you get to high school Latin. But the first 3 declensions are very common, so we're going to talk about those. Third declension we're actually going to get to in part 3 of the video because it does have some kind of weird quirks to it that we'll talk about then. So today, or in this video, we're going to focus on first and second declension nouns and their endings. So again, each declension, each group, has its own set of endings. And again, there will be different endings for each noun case. Remember each function that the noun has. And again, singular and plural as well. So let's talk about first declension. So first declension nouns are usually, and by usually I mean almost always, feminine. Again, remember this is a grammatical gender. It doesn't necessarily mean that the words are girls, right? There are objects in Latin that are feminine. So it's just a grammatical thing. Now, the exception to this is that there are words about occupations. So, for example, the word for pirate or farmer or poet or sailor, those Latin words, their Latin forms are going to have first declension endings, but they are masculine nouns. This becomes more important when we talk about adjectives. That's going to be for a later lesson. But for now, just know that first declension nouns are almost always feminine, and just kind of have that in the back of your head. All first declension nouns will have the same set of endings that we are going to see in this chart. And I will ask that you do copy down this chart in your notes. Again, it's going to be mostly blank in the cases we haven't learned yet, but I do want you to copy the whole chart out so you can start getting familiar with what a noun chart looks like in Latin. So for Latin, again, we have our 5 cases: nominative, genitive, dative, accusative, and ablative. Again, we're only focusing on nominative and accusative for now. The rest of these will be filled in at a later point. Now, our nominative singular ending for Latin nouns is going to be that A ending. We see this in words like femina, familia. Again, some of our masculine forms of the first declension, like pirate or poet. Poet is poeta, pirate is pirata. So those ones are actually pretty similar to their English forms. Again, remember, nominative is used for the subject. So if it is a singular subject in a sentence, for example, let's just go with pirate, pirata, right? If it's the subject, the pirate sails the ship, right? You're going to use pirata. Now, again, noun endings change when they become plural. So if it's a plural subject, the pirates sail the ship, you will use the form piratai, that AE ending, that I, it's pronounced I in Latin, but that AE ending is our plural subject ending. Now, if a noun in the first declension is the direct object, so I see a pirate, a pirate in that sentence is a direct object receiving the action of the verb, we're going to have the ending am, so piratam, right? So I see a pirate. If it's plural, I see pirates, right? Again, the pirates in that sentence are receiving the action of the verb. It will be piratas, okay? So that AS ending. It is a long A. If you have trouble keeping the long and short vowels straight, it's okay. It's a thing that you kind of get the hang of after a lot of practice and exposure to it. So don't panic. I will just be using them myself. If you mess it up, we'll help you out with that. So again, this is our first declension nouns, usually feminine, unless it's one of these occupations. Again, don't panic too much about the grammar. Just try and make sure you get these endings down and know what they mean when you see it. So if you see a noun that ends in an A, like this, that is a first declension noun, it's going to be a singular subject. If it's AM, it's going to be a singular direct object, and the same thing for our plurals. So that's first declension. This is fairly common. There's a lot of first declension nouns, and you should have seen quite a few of them last year. And again, new students are going to see a lot of them in our vocab review that we're doing. Second declension. This is another common declension. Now, second declension nouns are going to be either masculine or neuter. And again, this is a grammatical thing that's going to be very important when we talk about adjectives. So for now, just make sure you're trying to learn whether a noun is masculine or feminine or neuter. But again, just make sure you're not thinking, oh, it's a boy, it's a girl, it's a thing, because that's not how grammatical gender works exactly. Now, in second declension, the difference between masculine and neuter nouns happens in the nominative and accusative cases, which again are the only ones we know so far. The nice thing is once you learn the other cases, they're the same for both masculine and neuter. So now we've got our second declension chart. Let's take a look at this. So again, in the nominative case, our subject case, masculine second declension nouns will end in US. For the most part, there's a couple words that will end in R instead of US, and I'll talk about that when I kind of have some examples. Third declension nouns have some weird nominative forms, so I'll kind of talk about that. But most masculine nominative second declension nouns will end in US, like our word for cook in Latin. We'll see some examples of that. Coquus, or a word for servant or slave, because they did have slaves in ancient Rome. Servus, right? So that's that US ending. In the neuter nouns, the nominative is a little bit different. It ends in a UM. So, for example, forum, right? The forum is the Roman kind of marketplace or public area, and that is a neuter noun. And in the nominative, the subject form will end in UM. Plurals, if it's masculine, the plural form will end in a long I, which is pronounced E. So coquus, our word for cook. If you're saying cooks plural and they're the subject, it's going to be coqui. For plural neuter, that's going to be that A ending. Accusative, again, our direct object ending. For both masculine and neuter nouns, this will be UM. So that one's nice and easy. It's the same for both masculine and neuter. And the plural, this is another one where the masculine and neuter are different. Masculine, plural, accusative is going to end in an OS, so that OS ending. And then neuter plural is going to end in an A. So something to note is that neuter nouns will always have the same endings for nominative and accusative. So that's kind of nice. Masculine ones do change between the two of them. Again, copy this chart down. We'll get the other cases filled in eventually. And again, for genitive, dative, and ablative, they're going to be the same for masculine and neuter, which is really nice. All right, let's see some actual examples of nouns with these endings. So our first is a first declension noun. This is a feminine first declension noun. This is our word for family, in Latin, familia. Familia is going to be the nominative singular form. So if family is the subject, if it's plural, families, and it's the subject, it's going to be familiae. If it's the direct object, we're going to see familiam with that am ending. And then if it's plural direct object, it's going to be familias. Okay. And the nice thing is, all first declension nouns will have these exact same endings. So all you have to do is take the noun and change the endings to these. So like I said, we had pirata, our word for pirate. We had pirata, piratam, piratai and piratas. Okay, so it's the same for all first declension nouns. Second declension masculine nouns, we have this example that I already kind of told you, kokwus, our word for cook. And again, in the plural, it will be kokwi when it's the subject. The accusative direct object forms are kokwum in the singular and kokwos in the plural. And again, all masculine second declension nouns are going to have these endings. Nice and easy. And then second declension neuter nouns, these are not as common. Second declension is more often masculine than it is neuter, but there are some examples. So one of them is our word forum that I said. So forum is going to be our nominative subject form singular, the plural fora. And then again, for neuter nouns, they're the same in the nominative and accusative. So that's kind of nice. You don't have to learn any new endings for those. It's just one set for nominative, one set for singular, one set for plural. So there you go. Those are our first and second declension nouns. And then in part 3, we're going to talk about third declension, which gets a little bit wonky, but don't worry. And then we'll do some practice with some sentences and seeing these words in action. Thank you so much, and head on over to part 3.